In the shadowed halls of Willowmere Manor, a single letter from a forgotten love summons Hercule Poirot to unravel a mystery draped in passion and deceit. Why does a retired opera singer guard a sapphire brooch with a secret inscription? What truths lie hidden in stolen lockets, burned letters, and a brutal attack under the guise of a masquerade? As whispers of a scandalous affair and a long-ago murder surface, Poirot's little grey cells face a puzzle where every heart hides a motive. Will he unmask a killer driven by jealousy, or will the secrets of love bury the truth forever? Step into a world where romance masks danger, and every clue pulses with the heartbeat of betrayal. Chapter 1. The Letter from Brussels. The late afternoon sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Hercule Poirot's London flat, casting golden slivers across the polished mahogany table where he sat, meticulously arranging a row of perfectly sharpened pencils. The symmetry was pleasing, a small triumph of order in a world too often chaotic. Captain Arthur Hastings, sprawled in an armchair with a newspaper, glanced up with a sigh. "Poirot, old chap, don't you ever tire of straightening things? It's a wonder you don't alphabetize the dust motes." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile lurking beneath his fastidious exterior. "Mon ami, the little grey cells, they thrive on precision. Chaos, it is the enemy of deduction." Before Hastings could retort, a sharp rap at the door interrupted their banter. Mrs. Turner, Poirot's ever-efficient housekeeper, entered with a silver tray bearing a single envelope. "A letter for you, Mr. Poirot, from Brussels, by the look of the postmark." Poirot's green eyes gleamed with curiosity as he took the envelope, its cream paper embossed with a delicate floral crest. "Brussels," he murmured, slicing it open with a pearl-handled letter opener. The scent of lavender wafted from the page, and Poirot's brow furrowed as he read. Hastings, unable to contain his nosiness, leaned forward. "Well, don't keep me in suspense, Poirot. Who's it from?" "An old acquaintance," Poirot replied, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "Madame Elise Dubois, once a celebrated soprano of the Brussels Opera. She writes of a matter most delicate, a secret of the heart, and requests my presence at her estate in Kent. She resides there now, it seems, in retirement. A secret of the heart." Hastings' eyes widened. "Sounds like a romantic intrigue. Not your usual sort of case, eh?" Poirot folded the letter with a crisp snap. "The heart, Hastings, is a puzzle as intricate as any crime. And Madame Dubois, she is not one to summon Hercule Poirot without cause. We depart tomorrow." The journey to Kent was a study in contrasts. Hastings, all eager chatter about the countryside, and Poirot, silent, his mind already dissecting the enigma of Elise's letter. The train deposited them at a quaint station where a chauffeured Rolls-Royce awaited, its driver a stoic man with a scar above his brow. The vehicle wound through rolling hills to Willowmere Hall, a Georgian manor cloaked in ivy, its windows glinting like wary eyes. Elise Dubois greeted them at the grand entrance, her presence as commanding as Poirot remembered. Though age had silvered her hair, her sapphire eyes sparkled with the charisma that had once captivated audiences. She wore a silk gown the colour of midnight, a single emerald pendant at her throat. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice a melodic lilt, "you honour me with your swift response. And Captain Hastings, a pleasure." Hastings bowed, ever the gentleman, while Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, your letter spoke of urgency. I am here to listen." Elise led them into a drawing-room aglow with candlelight, where a small gathering awaited. The air hummed with tension, the kind that precedes a storm. She introduced her guests: Mr. Julian Carver, a lanky artist with ink-stained fingers and a restless gaze; Miss Clara Wren, a journalist with sharp features and sharper questions; and Countess Irina Volkov, a Russian émigré whose auburn curls and sly smile drew every eye. A fourth figure, a wiry man named Thomas Reed, hovered near the fireplace, his role as Elise's steward evident in his watchful demeanour. "Dinner will be served shortly," Elise announced, "but first, a toast to old friends and new mysteries." She raised a glass of champagne, her smile enigmatic as the group sipped. Irina's gaze lingered on Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you. Tell me, do you ever tire of unravelling secrets?" Poirot's moustache quivered with amusement. "Mademoiselle, a secret is but a lock, and the mind of Poirot, it is the key." Clara Wren snorted, scribbling in a notebook. "A poetic detective. How novel." Before Poirot could respond, a scream shattered the room's decorum. A maid, pale as chalk, burst in, clutching her apron. "The sapphire brooch, madame. It's gone from your jewel case." Elise's hand flew to her emerald pendant, her composure faltering. "Impossible. It was there this morning." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind already at work. "Madame, permit me to investigate. The loss of a jewel is never merely a loss." The guests were ushered to the dining room, where a sumptuous spread of roast pheasant and glazed vegetables awaited, though the mood was now taut as a violin string. Poirot, declining to eat until the matter was resolved, requested to see the jewel case in Elise's boudoir. Hastings trailed him, muttering about the inconvenience of crime before dinner. The boudoir was a vision of elegance, all velvet drapes and rosewood furniture. The jewel case, a lacquered box with a broken lock, sat on a vanity. Poirot examined it, his gloved fingers tracing the splintered wood. The lock, it was forced, but with care. This was no impulsive act. Hastings peered over his shoulder. "A professional thief, then?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his gaze drifting to a vase of fresh lilies. "But the thief, they are still among us. Observe, Hastings, the petals disturbed, as if someone brushed against them in haste." Returning to the dining room, Poirot requested the guests remain seated while he questioned the staff. The maid, still shaken, swore she'd seen no one. Near the boudoir, Thomas Reed, the steward, however, shifted uneasily when asked about his whereabouts. "I was tending the fires, sir," he said, his scar stark against his flushed skin. Poirot's attention turned to the guests. Julian Carver, admitted to sketching in the library, alone. Clara Wren claimed she'd been interviewing Elise about her opera days in the study. Irina, with a coy smile, said she'd been admiring the Manners art collection in the gallery. "Each of you," Poirot said, pacing before the table, "has an alibi, yet the brooch, it does not vanish of its own accord. I propose a small experiment." He instructed Thomas to dim the lights, plunging the room into shadow save for the flickering candles. "The thief, they rely on distraction. Let us see who flinches in the dark." A tense silence followed, broken by a clatter. Julian's fork had fallen, his hands trembling. "Nerves," he muttered, but Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur Carver, your sketches may, I see them." Reluctantly, Julian produced a leather-bound sketchbook. Among landscapes and portraits was a detailed drawing of the sapphire brooch, its facets rendered with uncanny precision. "I saw it this morning," Julian stammered, "when Madame Dubois showed it to us." Poirot's finger tapped the page. And yet, you did not mention this. Why? Before Julian could answer, Hastings, who had slipped away to check the servants' quarters, returned with a triumphant grin. Found it, Poirot, in the laundry basket, wrapped in a handkerchief. He held aloft the sapphire brooch, its deep blue catching the candlelight. Elise gasped, clutching her pendant. But how? Poirot turned to Thomas Reed, whose scar seemed to pulse with his quickening breath. Monsieur Reed, you tended the fires, yes, but the laundry room, it is far from the hearths. And this handkerchief, monogrammed with your initials. Thomas's shoulders slumped. I needed the money, he confessed, voice low. Madame's been kind, but debts, they pile up. Elisa's eyes softened with pity, but remained steely. The theft, it was clumsy, Monsieur Reed, but the brooch, it holds a secret, does it not, Madame? Elise hesitated, then nodded. It was a gift, long ago. The inscription inside, it speaks of a love I thought forgotten. Poirot opened the brooch's clasp, revealing a tiny engraving, to E, forever yours. The room fell silent, the weight of unspoken stories palpable. Madame Poirot said gently, this inscription, it is the heart of your summons, n'est-ce pas? Elisa's smile was wistful. You see too much, Monsieur Poirot. Yes, it is why I called you. But that is a tale for tomorrow. As Thomas was led away by the local constable, summoned discreetly by Hastings, the guests dispersed, murmuring. Irina lingered, her gaze on Poirot. You are a man of surprises, monsieur. I look forward to seeing what else you uncover. Poirot bowed, his expression unreadable. The heart, Countess, it hides many truths. And Hercule Poirot, he uncovers them all. Back in their guest quarters, Hastings flopped onto a chair. Well, Poirot, a thief caught, but I wager there's more. To this, that inscription, it's got you thinking, hasn't it? Poirot adjusted his tie, staring at the moonlit gardens beyond the window. Indeed, mon ami, the brooch, it is but the first note in a symphony of secrets. Tomorrow we shall hear the next. The chapter closed with the manor settling into an uneasy quiet, the sapphire brooch safe, but its inscription a key to a deeper mystery, one that stirred even Poirot's disciplined heart. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The morning after the sapphire brooch's recovery dawned crisp and golden over Willowmere Hall, the Kentish manor seeming to hold its breath under a veil of mist. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood at his guest-room window, his green eyes scanning the dukest lawns. The inscription on the brooch to E, forever yours, had lodged in his mind like a melody, its notes hinting at a story yet to unfold. Captain Hastings, still bleary-eyed from the previous night's excitement, joined him, nursing a cup of tea. Poirot, you've got that look, Hastings said, stifling a yawn. The one that means you're already 3 steps ahead of the rest of us. What's on your mind? The heart, mon ami, Poirot replied, adjusting his tie with precision. It leaves traces, even when it wishes to remain hidden. Madame Dubois, she guards a secret, and the theft of her brooch, it was but the overture. Hastings raised an eyebrow. You think there's more to come? Thomas Reed's locked up, after all. Poirot's moustache curved upward. The stage, it is never empty when Hercule Poirot is present. Come, we must speak with Madame. They found Elise Dubois in the conservatory, a glass-walled haven filled with exotic orchids, and the soft gurgle of a marble fountain. She sat on a wicker chair, her silk shawl draped like a protective mantle. The sapphire brooch, now safely returned, gleamed at her throat, its presence both a comfort and a challenge. Monsieur Poirot, Elise said, her voice a blend of warmth and weariness, you have my gratitude for last night. But I sense you are not here to bask in triumph. Poirot inclined his head. Madame, the brooch, it speaks of a love that lingers. The inscription to E, forever yours it, is no mere trinket's adornment. Will you share its story? Elise's fingers brushed the brooch, her sapphire eyes distant. It was a gift from a man I loved, long ago in Brussels. He was not free to love me openly. That is all I will say for now. Before Poirot could press further, the conservatory door swung open, admitting Countess Irina Volkov. Her auburn curls caught the morning light, and her smile was a delicate balance of charm and mischief. Monsieur Poirot, you are up early. Chasing shadows. Might I join you? Hastings, ever susceptible to a pretty face, blushed. Of course, Countess. We were just discussing the brooch. Irina's gaze flicked to Elise's throat. A beautiful piece. It carries a story. I think, as all such jewels do. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the subtle weight in her words. And you, Countess, have a story of your own, n'est-ce pas? Last night you spoke of a lost love. Perhaps it is not so distant from Madame Dubois's tale. Irina laughed, a sound like crystal chimes. You are perceptive, monsieur, but my losses are old wounds, best left unopened. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the hallway. Clara Wren, the sharp-eyed journalist, burst in, her notebook clutched like a shield. Madame Dubois, your locket's gone. I saw the maid tidying your room, and the case was open, empty. Elise rose, her shawl slipping to the floor. My locket, no, it cannot be. It is irreplaceable. Poirot's mind snapped to attention. Another theft, so soon after the first, was no coincidence. Madame, describe this locket, s'il vous plaît. It is silver, heart-shaped, with a rose engraved on its face, Elise said, her voice trembling. Inside, there is a photograph. Of him, Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. Him. The same fellow from the brooch. Elise nodded, her composure fraying. Poirot turned to Clara. Mademoiselle Wren, you are observant. What else did you see in Madame's room? Clara hesitated, then admitted the maid was flustered, and Julian Carver was lingering near the staircase, sketchbook in hand. I thought nothing of it until now. Poirot's moustache twitched. A pattern emerges. Hastings, fetch Monsieur Carver. We must have a little chat. While Hastings hurried off, Poirot examined the conservatory, his gaze settling on a trail of potting soil near the fountain. Curious, he murmured, crouching to inspect the grains. This soil, it is not from these orchids. It comes from elsewhere. Hastings returned with Julian Carver, whose lanky frame seemed to shrink under Poirot's scrutiny. The artist clutched his sketchbook, his fingers stained with charcoal. I was sketching the sunrise, Julian said defensively. I didn't go near Madame's room. Yet you were near the staircase, Poirot said, his tone mild but unyielding. And your sketches, monsieur, they have a habit of capturing more than landscapes. Before Julian could protest, Irina interjected, her voice soft but pointed. Monsieur Poirot, you suspect us all, don't you? Perhaps you should look to the staff again. They know the house's secrets better than we do. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A suggestion most interesting, Countess. But the staff, they are not the only ones with access. Let us visit Madame's room. The group ascended to Elise's bedroom, a sanctuary of soft blues and gilt mirrors. The jewel case, still bearing the scars of the previous night's tampering, sat on the vanity, its lid ajar. Poirot examined the empty compartment where the locket had rested, noting a faint scratch on the velvet lining. The locket was removed with care, he said. This is not the work of a desperate thief, but one who searches for something specific. Hastings, poking about the room, lifted a curtain and gasped, "Poirot, look, a footprint in the dust by the window." Poirot joined him, studying the faint outline of a boot. Bean, the thief, they entered or exited here, perhaps to avoid the hallway's eyes. Elise clutched her brooch, her voice barely a whisper. "The locket, it holds his face. If it is lost, I lose him again." Irina placed a hand on Elise's arm, her expression softening. "I know such pain, madame. In Russia, I too lost a love, his memory kept only in a trinket I no longer have." Poirot's gaze lingered on Irina, her words stirring a memory of his own of Countess Rossakoff, whose fiery charm had once tested his resolve. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task. "Madame, this locket, it is not merely stolen, it is sought. Someone wishes to know your secret." Determined to unmask the thief, Poirot devised a plan. He gathered the guests in the library, a grand room lined with leather-bound tomes and lit by a roaring fire. "Mies, Amos," he said, pacing before the hearth, "the locket, it is hidden. Among us, I propose a search not of your rooms, but of your possessions." Clara Wren bristled. "You can't accuse us without evidence." "Evidence, mademoiselle, is what I seek," Poirot replied. "And the guilty, they will reveal themselves." He began with Julian's sketchbook, flipping through pages of landscapes and portraits. A sketch of Elise, her eyes, luminous, caught his attention, but nothing incriminated the artist. Irina offered her silk purse, which contained only a compact and a letter in Russian, its contents mundane. Clara, however, hesitated when Poirot approached her satchel. "It's just my notes," she said, clutching the bag. Poirot's smile was disarming. "Then you will not mind, mademoiselle." Reluctantly, Clara handed over the satchel. Inside, tucked between pages of shorthand, was the silver locket, its rose engraving glinting. Elise gasped, reaching for it. "How dare you?" Clara's face flushed. "I didn't steal it. I found it by the fountain and meant to return it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Found it, mademoiselle. Yet you said nothing. And this satchel, it has soil on its strap, soil like that near the conservatory fountain." Clara's defiance crumbled. "I'm a journalist, Monsieur Poirot. I was hired to uncover Madame Dubois's past affair with a diplomat, a scandal that could still ruin reputations. The locket, I thought it held proof." Elise's voice was ice. "You pried into my life for a story." Poirot raised a hand. Mademoiselle Wren is not the thief, but a pawn. The locket was placed to be found, to distract from a greater search. The true culprit, they sought something else in your room." He turned to Irina, whose composure faltered for a moment. "Countess, your suggestion to suspect the starfit was to divert attention. Irina laughed, but it was strained. "You see conspiracies everywhere, monsieur." "For now," Poirot said, returning the locket to Elise. "But the shadows of the past, they grow longer. Madame, what does this locket hold?" Elise opened it, revealing a faded photograph of a man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "My love," she whispered, "lost to me, but never forgotten." As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his mind racing. "Hastings," he said softly, "the locket, it is a key to a door not yet opened. Someone searches for Elise's truth, and they will not stop. Hastings nodded, his tea long forgotten. Another mystery, Poirot, and I've a feeling it's only getting started. The library fire crackled, casting shadows that danced like secrets, as Poirot contemplated the next move in a game that touched both heart and mind. Chapter 3. The Masquerade Ball. The evening air at Willowmere Hall carried a crisp edge, tempered by the glow of 100 lanterns strung across the gardens. Inside, the grand ballroom shimmered with anticipation, its chandeliers casting prisms over a sea of masked guests. Hercule Poirot, resplendent in a black velvet suit and a silver Venetian mask that accentuated his piercing green eyes, surveyed the scene with the precision of a conductor before a symphony. The Masquerade Ball, announced by Elise Dubois to lift the manor's strained spirits, was a spectacle of opulence, yet Poirot sensed an undercurrent of unease, as if the masks concealed more than faces. Captain Hastings, adjusting a rather domino mask, sidled up to him. "I say, Poirot, this is quite the affair. But after 2 thefts, don't you think a ball's a bit frivolous?" Poirot's moustache twitched behind his mask. Mon ami, in the masquerade, the truth often reveals itself. When the face is hidden, the heart speaks louder. Observe, and we shall see. Elise, radiant in a sapphire gown that echoed. Her recovered brooch glided through the crowd, her own mask a delicate filigree of gold. She paused to greet Poirot, her smile tinged with melancholy. "Monsieur Poirot, you honour us with your elegance. Will you dance tonight?" Poirot bowed, his mask glinting. "Madame, the dance of deduction is my preference, but perhaps one waltz for the sake of decorum." As the orchestra struck up a Viennese waltz, Countess Irina Volkov approached, her crimson gown swirling like a flame. Her mask, adorned with peacock feathers, framed eyes that sparkled with mischief. "Monsieur Poirot, a man who dances with secrets must surely spare a moment for the floor. Will you indulge me?" Hastings, ever the gallant, offered his arm to Elise, leaving Poirot little choice. He took Irina's hand, his movements precise yet surprisingly graceful. As they twirled, Irina's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "You suspect me, don't you, of meddling in Madame Dubois's affairs?" Poirot's eyes met hers through their masks. "Countess, your charm is a mask of its own, but your interest in Elisa's loquetette was not mere curiosity, n'est-ce pas?" Irina's laugh was soft, like the rustle of silk. "You see too much, monsieur, but I am no thief. My past, it intersects with Elise's in ways I cannot yet explain." Their dance was interrupted by a commotion near the French doors leading to the garden. Julian Carver, his artist's smock replaced by a harlequin costume, stood arguing with Clara Wren, whose emerald mask did little to hide her scowl. "You're prying again, Clara," Julian snapped, his voice carrying over the music. "Leave the past alone." Poirot excused himself from Irina, his senses alert. Before he could intervene, a piercing cry echoed from the garden. The music faltered, and guests turned as Hastings pushed through the crowd, his mask askew. "Poirot, someone's hurt out there." Poirot hurried to the garden, where a figure lay slumped beneath a rose arbor, moonlight illuminating a crumpled form. It was Mr. Lionel Grayson, a latecomer to the gathering. Introduced earlier as a retired banker with a penchant for rare books. His silver mask lay beside him, and his hand clutched a torn scrap of paper. Blood trickled from a gash on his temple. Elise, arriving with a gasp, knelt beside him. "Lionel, mon Dieu, what happened?" Poirot's gloved fingers checked Grayson's pulse. He lives, madame, but he is unconscious. Hastings, fetch water and a cloth. We must revive him. As Hastings dashed off, Poirot examined the paper in Grayson's hand. It was a fragment of a letter, the ink faded but legible. Your affair. With him was no secret. The scandal could ruin us all. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, and hauntingly familiar. Poirot tucked the fragment into his pocket, his mind racing. Clara Wren, hovering nearby, scribbled furiously in her notebook. This is no accident, Monsieur Poirot. Someone meant to silence him. Poirot's gaze was sharp. Mademoiselle, your pen is swift, but your conclusions, they are premature. Tell me, where were you when this cry was heard? Clara bristled. In the ballroom, arguing with Julian. Ask anyone. Julian, his harlequin bells jingling faintly, nodded. She was with me, pestering me about my sketches. Poirot turned to Irina, who had followed them into the garden. And you, Countess, after our dance, where did you go? Irina's peacock feathers quivered. I stepped out for air, near the terrace. I saw nothing until the scream. Hastings returned with a damp cloth, and Poirot applied it to Grayson's brow. The banker stirred, groaning. The letter, she gave it to me. Said it was proof. Who, monsieur? Poirot pressed, his voice gentle but firm. Grayson's eyes. Fluttered Elise. No, not Elise. A woman in a mask. Before he could say more, he lapsed back into unconsciousness. Poirot stood, his mind a whirl of connections. Madame Dubois, this letter it speaks of a scandal. Your scandal, perhaps. Elise's hand trembled on her brooch. It could be. Years ago, in Brussels, my love for a diplomat caused whispers. He was married, powerful. His enemies would have used it against him. Poirot's eyes scanned the garden, landing on a pair of footprints in the soft earth near the arbor, leading toward a gravel path. The attacker, they fled this way. Hastings examined the path. Look for anything out of place. Hastings, eager to contribute, hurried off, while Poirot studied the guests. Julian's nervous, fidgeting, Clara's relentless note-taking, and Irina's poised calm all told stories, but none complete. The orchestra resumed, drawing guests back to the ballroom, but Poirot remained, his mask now in his hand, his face a study in concentration. Hastings returned, holding a silk glove stained with mud. Found this on the path, Poirot. It's a woman's, by the size. Poirot examined the glove, noting a faint monogram. IV, Countess Volkov, this is yours, we. Irina's composure faltered. I must have dropped it earlier, I told you. I was on the terrace. Yet the mud, it is fresh, Poirot said, and the path leads from this arbor. Before Irina could respond, Grayson stirred again, his voice weak. Not her, a man, tall, in a cloak. He struck me when I refused to give up the letter. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A man, you say? Bean, we narrow the field. He instructed Elise to call for a doctor, ensuring Grayson's care, then gathered. The guests in the ballroom's antechamber. Mise Amis, he said, his voice commanding attention. An attack has occurred, and a letter, it speaks of secrets. I ask for honesty. Who among you knows of this scandal? Silence hung heavy, broken only by Julian's muttered, I only draw what I see. I don't meddle in gossip. Clara, however, stepped forward. I've heard rumors, Monsieur Poirot. The diplomat Lisa's lover was a man named Victor Laurent. His death was hushed up, called an accident, but some say it was murder. Elise paled, gripping her brooch. You speak of things you cannot understand, mademoiselle. Poirot raised a hand. Enough. The letter, it is incomplete. We must find its other half. Hastings, check the arbor again. Look for anything hidden. Hastings returned minutes later, triumphant. Got it, Poirot, tucked under a rosebush. He handed over a second scrap of paper, which completed the letter. Your affair with Victor Laurent was no secret. The scandal could ruin us all. Return the proof, or I will take it. Poirot's mind clicked like a well-oiled lock. The attacker sought this letter, but why? To protect a reputation or to expose one? He turned to the guests, his gaze lingering on their masks, now discarded in the antechamber's candlelight. The footprints, they are deep, suggesting a man of stature, and this glove, it is a distraction, placed to mislead. Irina exhaled, relief flickering in her eyes. Then I am cleared. For now, Poirot said, but the night, it is not yet over. As the doctor arrived to tend Grayson, Poirot noticed a guest's absence. Where is Monsieur Grayson's companion, the tall man in the cloak who arrived with him? Elise frowned. He left early, claiming illness. A Mr. Edmund Holt. Poirot's moustache curved. Holt, a name to remember. Hastings, note the muddy shoes of our guests tomorrow. The garden, it will betray the guilty. The ball resumed, its gaiety strained. Elise approached Poirot, her voice low. Monsieur, you stir old wounds. Be careful, the past is not kind. Poirot bowed. Madame, the past, it is my domain. And Hercule Poirot, he does not falter. As the music swelled, Poirot stood by the French doors, the torn letter in his pocket a weight heavier than its paper. The night had unmasked one truth, but others lurked, waiting for his little grey cells to bring them to light. Chapter 4. The Garden's Secret, the morning after the masquerade ball. Willowmere Hall lay under a shroud of mist, its gardens a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. Hercule Poirot, his black patent shoes gleaming despite the dew, stood at the edge of the manor's sprawling grounds, his green eyes tracing the path where muddy footprints had betrayed a fleeing assailant. The torn letter from the previous night, its words hinting at a scandal tied to Elise Dubois's long-ago love, burned in his memory. Captain Hastings, bundled in a tweed coat, joined him, his breath visible in the chill air. Poirot, you're up early again, Hastings said, rubbing his hands. Those footprints from last night think they'll lead us to this Holt fellow. Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. Mon ami, footprints are but the echo of intent. They lead, yes, but to what? The letter speaks of a scandal, and the scandal, it points to a truth someone wishes buried. We must explore the garden. The manor's grounds stretched beyond. A manicured lawn, giving way to a tangled wilderness of rose bushes and ancient oaks. Poirot followed the gravel path from the rose arbor, where Lionel Grayson had been attacked, noting how it veered into a neglected corner. There, half hidden by ivy, stood a small stone pavilion, its roof sagging under years of weather. The door, ajar, creaked as Poirot pushed it open, revealing a dusty interior cluttered with old gardening tools and a locked wooden box on a weathered table. Curious, Poirot murmured, examining the box. Its lock was rusted but intact, and faint scratches suggested recent tampering. This pavilion, it is not visited often, yet someone has been here. Hastings peered over his shoulder. Looks like a gardener's shed. What's in the box, do you think? Poirot produced a small tool from his paquita, delicate pick he carried for such occasions, deftly opened the lock. Inside were a dozen letters, their paper yellowed but preserved, tied with a faded ribbon. The topmost letter bore Elise's name in a bold, masculine hand. Poirot unfolded it carefully, reading aloud. "My dearest Elise, I will leave her, I swear it. Meet me in Brussels, and we shall be free." Hastings whistled. "That's Victor Laurent, isn't it? The diplomat Clara mentioned. Sounds like—" He was serious about Elise. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "We, but a married man's promises, they are fragile. These letters, they are a treasure and a danger." Before he could read further, a shout echoed from the manor. Countess Irina. Volkov, her auburn curls loose in the morning breeze, hurried toward them, her face pale. Monsieur Poirot, Madame du Bois's, beside herself. "She says you must come at once." Poirot tucked the letters into his coat, locking the box behind him. "What has occurred, Countess?" Irina's voice trembled. "It's the pavilion. There's smoke, someone's set it alight." Poirot and Hastings sprinted back to the pavilion, where tendrils of smoke curled from the windows. Flames licked at the wooden beams, and Hastings, acting on instinct, seized a bucket from a nearby well and doused the fire. Poirot, more methodical, scanned the area, spotting a trail of spilled oil leading to a discarded matchstick. The fire. It was no accident, Poirot said, his voice sharp. Someone wished to destroy these letters. Hastings, coughing from the smoke, gestured to the box. "Good thing you got them out, Poirot. But who knew they were here?" Irina, hovering nearby, wrung her hands. "I saw no one, monsieur. But I was walking the grounds earlier. Perhaps I missed something." Poirot's gaze lingered on her. "Countess, your walks, they are frequent. And last night your glove was found near the arbor. You know more of this place than you admit." Irina's eyes flashed. "I am no arsonist, Monsieur Poirot, but I knew Victor Laurent years ago. His family was close to mine in Russia. When I learned Elise was his love, I came here to understand why he vanished." Poirot's mustache curved. "Vanished, you say? Not died?" Before Irina could answer, Elise appeared, her sapphire gown replaced by a simple day dress, her face etched with worry. "Monsieur Poirot, the pavilion, my letters, they were all I had left of him." Poirot held up the bundle. "They are safe, madame. But tell me, why were they hidden here?" Elise hesitated, her fingers brushing the brooch at her throat. "Victor and I, we met in secret in this pavilion during his visits to Kent. After he disappeared, I hid our letters here, fearing his wife's family would destroy them." Hastings frowned. "Disappeared. Clara said he was murdered." Elise's eyes filled with tears. "The police called it an accident, fall from a cliff, but I never believed it. Someone wanted him silenced." Poirot's mind raced, connecting. The brooch, the locket, the torn letter, and now the fire. "Madame, someone knows of these letters and fears their truth. The attack on Monsieur Grayson, the thefts, the fire, they are all threads of the same tapestry." As the group returned to the manor, Poirot noticed Julian Carver sketching near the lawn, his eyes darting toward them. Clara Wren, meanwhile, lingered on the terrace, her notebook open. Poirot approached Julian, his tone deceptively mild. "Monsieur Carver, your sketches, they capture much. Have you drawn this pavilion?" Julian's charcoal paused. "Once, yes. It's picturesque, in a ruined way." "Show me," Poirot said, his voice firm, reluctantly. Julian flipped to a sketch of the pavilion, its ivy rendered in meticulous detail. But one drawing stood out, a portrait of Elise, standing within the pavilion, her face radiant with love. I imagined her there, Julian admitted. From stories I overheard, Poirot's eyes narrowed. Stories or secrets? You know more than you say, monsieur. Before Julian could respond, Clara approached, her sharp features alight with curiosity. Monsieur Poirot, I've been digging. Victor Laurent's death was no accident. There were rumors of a rival, someone jealous of his affair with Elise. Poirot turned to Elise. Madame, a rival. Who might this be? Elise shook her head. I knew of no one. Victor swore I was his only love. Irina, silent until now, spoke softly. In Russia, we heard whispers of a man, a friend of Victor's. Wife who despised him. A man of influence, perhaps here in England. Poirot's mind clicked like a lock turning. A man of influence, like Monsieur Edmund Holt, who fled the ball last night. Hastings, wiping soot from his hands, nodded. Holt's tall, Fitz. Grayson's description of his attacker, and those muddy footprints could be his. Poirot instructed the group to remain at the manor while he and Hastings returned to the pavilion's charred remains. The fire had been contained, but the oil trail suggested intent. Poirot knelt, examining a glint in the Ashizaka flink, engraved with the initials E.H. Edmund Holt. Poirot said, holding it up, "He is careless, this one." But the fire, it was meant to destroy the letters, not the pavilion itself. Hastings frowned. Why burn them now, after all these years? Because, mon ami, someone fears the truth they hold. A truth about Victor Laurent's death. Back in the manor's drawing room, Poirot confronted Irina privately. Countess, you knew Laurent. Did you know of this rival? Irina's composure wavered. I heard of a man, a diplomat like Victor, who visited Brussels often. His name was whispered but never confirmed. I came to Willowmere to learn if Elise knew more. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And the fire, your walks, they take you close to the pavilion. Irina's eyes flashed. I swear, monsieur, I did not set the fire, but I saw someone, a tall figure, near the oaks, just before the smoke rose. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Merci, Countess. For now, you are not accused. But the truth, it will emerge. As evening fell, Elise invited Poirot to her study, where she handed him a single letter from the bundle. Read this, monsieur. It was Victor's last, he wrote. A fear of someone watching him. The letter, dated weeks before Laurent's death, spoke of a shadowed figure, a threat to their love. Elise, if I fall, it is no accident. Protect our letters, for they are proof. Poirot folded the letter, his mind ablaze. Madame, the pavilion's fire was but one act in a drama of concealment. The rival, he is here, among us. Hastings, entering with a tray of tea, caught the tail end. Halt again, Poirot, or someone. Else Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The garden, it has spoken, but not yet sung. Tomorrow, we shall find the next note. The manor settled into a tense quiet, the pavilion's charred remains a silent witness to a secret that refused to burn. Chapter 5. The confession. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Willowmere Hall, bathing the manor's oak-panelled dining room in a warm, deceptive glow. Hercule Poirot, his black suit immaculate despite the day's exertions, stood at the head of the long table, his green eyes scanning the assembled guests. The events of the past days, the stolen brooch, the pilfered locket, the attack on Lionel Grayson. and the fire in the pavilion had woven a tapestry of intrigue, and Poirot sensed the threads were converging. Captain Hastings, seated to his right, fidgeted with his napkin, his usual cheer subdued by the manner's mounting tension. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, "you've got that look again. Planning something dramatic, I wager." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon ami, the stage is set for truth. Tonight we shall see who falters under the spotlight of Hercule Poirot." Elise Dubois, her sapphire brooch glinting at her throat, presided over the table with strained grace. Her eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, darted to the guests. Countess Irina Volkov, her auburn curls framed by a velvet shawl. Julian Carver, his artist's hands restless. Clara Wren, her notebook replaced by a guarded expression, and Lionel Grayson, recovered but pale, his silver hair stark against his bruised temple. The absence of Edmund Holt, the tall man in the cloak who had fled the masquerade ball, hung like a spectre over the gathering. The meal began with a delicate consomme, but the clink of spoons was overshadowed by an uneasy silence. Poirot, declining to eat, rose, his voice cutting through the tension. "Mes amis, we are gathered not merely for dinner, but for a reckoning. The secrets of Willowmere, whole secrets of love, betrayal, and perhaps murder can no longer hide." Elise spoon clattered to her plate. "Monsieur Poirot, must we air such matters now?" "Oui, madame," Poirot said, his tone gentle but firm. "The brooch, the locket, the letter, the firewall point to a truth you have guarded. Victor Laurent, your love, did not die by accident, did he?" Elisa's hand flew to her brooch, her voice barely a whisper. "I told you, monsieur. I always believed he was murdered." Clara Wren leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "I've said as much. My sources in Brussels hinted at foul play, a rival, someone who wanted Victor silenced." Poirot's gaze shifted to Irina. "Countess Volkov, you knew Laurent. You spoke of a man, a rival, close to his wife. Yet you withhold his name. Why?" Irina's smile was tight. "I have no proof, monsieur. Only rumors from a life left behind." Julian Carver, his voice unsteady, interjected. "Why drag us into this? I'm just an artist, here to paint Madame Dubois's portrait." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Your sketches, Monsieur Carver, they are more than art. Your portrait of Madame in the pavilion, it captures a moment you should not know." How Julian flushed, his fingers twisting a napkin. I overheard stories, servants' talk. I imagined her there, with him." Hastings, unable to resist, muttered, "Awfully detailed imagination, old boy." Poirot paced, his steps deliberate. "Let us consider the facts. A brooch, stolen and returned, bears an inscription of love. A locket, taken and recovered, holds a photograph of Victor Laurent. A letter, torn and found, speaks of a scandal. A fire, set to destroy letters that prove Laurent's fear of a threat, and an attack on Monsieur Grayson, who held part of that letter. All these acts, they are not random. They are a campaign to bury a truth, or to unearth it. Grayson, his voice hoarse, spoke up. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, a man in a cloak struck me. He wanted the letter, said it was dangerous." Poirot nodded, producing the cufflink from the pavilion's ashes. "Engraved with E.H. Edmund Holt, he is our missing player. But is he the puppet or the puppeteer?" Clara's eyes widened. "Holt, my employer mentioned him a diplomat, with ties to Laurent's wife. I was hired to find proof of the affair, but I never met him." Poirot's mind clicked like a lock turning. He had planned this dinner to provoke, and now he played his trump card. Madame et messieurs, I propose. A test. The guilty, they fear exposure. Let us speak of Victor Laurent's death. Madame Dubois, you said he fell from a cliff. But the letters, they tell of a man who feared for his life. Who was this rival? Elise's voice trembled. I knew of no rival. Victor swore his heart was mine. Irina's composure faltered, her shawl slipping. In Russia, we heard of a man James Marwood, a diplomat. He loved Victor's wife and hated Victor for betraying her. Poirot's gaze snapped to Clara. Mademoiselle Wren, your employer, who is he? Clara hesitated, then blurted, A private firm, Marwood and Sons. They wanted dirt on Elise to protect their family name. The room gasped. Julian dropped his glass, wine staining the tablecloth. Marwood, you mean? The scandal's still alive. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Oui, and it draws a confession. Mademoiselle Wren, you are not the thief, nor the attacker, nor the arsonist, but you are a link to the truth. Before Clara could protest, a crash came from the far end of the table. Lionel Grayson stood, his face ashen, pointing at Clara. You brought this upon us. I was attacked because of your meddling. Poirot raised a hand. Calm, Monsieur Grayson. But tell us, why did you hold that letter? Grayson sank back, his voice breaking. I loved Elise, years ago, before Victor. When she chose him, I left Brussels. I came here to protect her, to warn her. The letter, I found it in her study, hidden. I thought it would keep her safe. Elise's eyes filled with tears. Lionel, you never told me. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind remained sharp. Monsieur Grayson, your love, it is noble, but it blinds you. The letter was a lure, placed to draw out the guilty. He turned to Clara, his voice like steel. Mademoiselle, your employer, this Marwood and Sons, they seek not just scandal, but silence. You were used. Clara's defiance crumbled. I didn't know they'd go this far. They paid me to find proof, to ruin Elise. But the attack, the fire eye, had no part in that. Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind him. The fire, the attack, they are the work of one who fears the letter's truth. And the cufflink, it points to Edmund Holt. But Holt, he is not here. So, we look closer. He stopped before Julian, whose hands trembled. Monsieur Carver, your sketches, they are too precise. The pavilion, Elise's face, the lockets. Rose, you have seen more than you admit. Julian's eyes darted to the door. I told you, I overheard things. Poirot's voice was a whip. Non, monsieur, you are James Marwood's son, are you not? Sent to destroy the letters, to protect your family's honor. The room froze. Julian's face drained of color, his sketchbook falling to the floor. How did you know? Your sketches, Poirot said, they betray your obsession. The pavilion, you drew it before the fire, yet you claimed only to imagine it. And your name, Carver, a pseudonym, but your eyes, they are Marwood's, from a portrait I saw in Elisa's study. Julian slumped, his voice a whisper. My father loved Victor's wife. When Victor's affair with Elise threatened her, he confronted Victor. After Victor died, father swore it was an accident, but the letters they could prove otherwise. I came to find them, to burn them, Elise gasped. You would destroy my memories. Julian's eyes were wild. I wanted justice for my father. He suffered because of your affair. He lunged for the door, but Hastings, quick despite his surprise, blocked him. "Not so fast, old boy." Poirot stepped forward, his calm a stark contrast to the chaos. "Monsieur Carver or Marwood, your confession, it is incomplete. You set the fire, but the attack on Grayson, the thefts. You are not alone." Julian shook his head. "I only wanted the letters. I didn't touch Grayson, I swear." Poirot nodded. "I believe you. The true murderer, they remain hidden. But you have played your part." As Hastings escorted Julian to a locked room, to await the constable, Elise approached Poirot, her voice soft. "Monsieur, you have saved my letters, my heart, but Victor's killer he's still here." Poirot's eyes were grave. "Madame, the confession of one is but the prelude to the truth. Tomorrow we shall unmask the final player." The dinner dispersed, the guests retreating to their rooms, their masks of civility shattered. Poirot stood by the window, the night sky a canvas of stars. "Hastings," he said, "the heart, it drives men to madness. But the mind of Poirot, it sees through the shadows." Hastings nodded, his tea cold. "One more act, Poirot. I hope it's the last." The manners. Silence was heavy, the confession a step toward truth. But the shadow of Victor Laurent's killer loomed, waiting for Poirot's final move. Chapter 6. The heart's resolution. The morning sun broke through the mist, enveloping Willowmere Hall, casting a golden veil over the manor's ivy-clad walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand drawing-room, its tall windows framing the gardens where so many secrets had been unearthed. The weight of the past days, the stolen brooch, the pilfered locket, the attack on Lionel Grayson, the pavilion fire, and Julian Carver's confession as James Marwood's son pressed upon him. Yet one truth remained elusive: the identity of Victor Laurent's murderer. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with resolve, for today the final act would unfold. Captain Hastings, polishing his monocle with a handkerchief, joined him, his face a mix of anticipation and fatigue. "Poirot, you've got that look, the one that says you've solved it. Care to let me in on it?" Poirot's moustache curved slightly. "Mon ami, the little grey cells, they have danced their final waltz. Today we unmask the killer of Victor Laurent and the heart of Madame Dubois. It shall find peace." The guests were summoned to the drawing-room, their faces etched with tension. Elise Dubois, her sapphire brooch glinting like a talisman, stood by the fireplace, her composure fragile. Countess Irina Volkov, her auburn curls subdued by a simple chignon, watched Poirot with wary admiration. Clara Wren, her journalistic fervour dimmed, clutched a cup of tea. Lionel Grayson, his temple still bruised, sat stiffly, while Julian Carver, under guard by a local constable, glared from a corner. The absence of Edmund Holt, the elusive diplomat, was a silent question. Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. "Madame et messieurs, we have unravelled a tapestry of secrets at Willowmere Hall, a brooch inscribed with love, stolen and returned. A locket bearing a photograph, taken and recovered. A letter torn and found, speaking of scandal. A fire set to destroy proof, an attack to silence a witness, and a confession revealing a son's loyalty to a tarnished name. But one truth remains: who killed Victor Laurent?" Elise's hand trembled on her brooch. "Monsieur Poirot, you have done so much. Must we reopen old wounds?" "Oui, Madame," Poirot said gently. "For your heart and for justice, the wound must be cleansed." He produced the bundle of letters from the pavilion, their yellowed pages a testament to a lost love. These letters, they tell of Victor Laurent's promise to leave his wife for you, madame. But his final letter spoke of fear, a shadowed figure, a threat. The cufflink marked EH points to Edmund Holt, yet he is absent. Why? Clara Wren spoke up, her voice hesitant. My employer, Marwood and Sons, mentioned Holt as a family friend. I thought he was just a lead, but could he have been involved? Poirot nodded. A question most pertinent, mademoiselle. But let us reconstruct the night of Laurent's death. He fell from a cliff in Brussels, called an accident. Yet the letters suggest otherwise. Someone wished to silence his affair with Madame Dubois, to protect a reputation or a heart. Irina Volkov's eyes flickered. Monsieur Poirot, you suspect Holt, but I knew him in Russia. He was ambitious, yes, but not violent. Poirot's gaze was piercing. Countess, your knowledge of Holt, it is selective. You have protected someone, Nan, before Irina could respond. Hastings, who had been examining the room's artifacts, held up a small brass key. Found this behind a vase. Poirot, looks like it fits a desk drawer. Poirot's eyes lit up. Bean, Hastings. Let us see what secrets it unlocks. He led the group to Elisa's study, a cozy room lined with books and a rosewood desk. The key fit a locked drawer, revealing a leather-bound journal. Poirot opened it, scanning pages filled with Elisa's elegant script. One entry, dated days before Laurent's death, caught his eye. Victor fears his friend, Charles. He says Charles loves me too, and will stop at nothing to keep us apart. Elise gasped. Charles Benton, Victor's valet. He was always so loyal, so quiet. Poirot's mind raced. A valet, close to his master, privy to his secrets. And here, at Willowmere, we have a valet, Thomas Benton, Madame's butler. The room stilled. Thomas Benton, the wiry steward who had stolen the brooch in Chapter 1, had been released after paying a fine, his crime attributed to debts. He now entered, carrying a tray of sherry, his scar stark against his pale face. Poirot turned to him, his voice like a blade. Monsieur Benton, or should I say Charles Benton, you served Victor Laurent in Brussels, and you loved Madame Dubois in silence while she loved another. Benton's tray clattered to the floor, sherry splashing across the rug. You can't know that. Poirot stepped closer, his presence commanding. The brooch you stole to possess a piece of her heart. The locket you sought to destroy her memory of Laurent. The letter you attacked Grayson to reclaim it. The fire you set to burn the letters that could expose you. And Victor Laurent, you pushed him from that cliff out of jealousy. Elise's voice broke. Charles, is it true? Benton's scar seemed to pulse, his eyes wild. I loved you. Elise, Victor was unworthy, married, deceitful. He promised to leave his wife, but he never would. I heard him laugh about it, mocking you. I couldn't let him hurt you. Lionel Grayson stood, his voice trembling. You attacked me too, didn't you, for holding that letter? Benton's shoulders slumped. I thought it named me. I panicked. Poirot's voice was calm but unyielding. You killed Laurent, monsieur, and spent years hiding your crime. The cufflink marked EH was a misdirection planted to implicate Holt, who merely fled to avoid scandal. Benton lunged for the door, but Hastings, ever ready, tackled him, pinning him until the constable secured him. Elise sank into a chair, tears streaming. All this time, Charles, you carried this alone. Poirot knelt beside her. Madame, the heart, it is a heavy burden. But you are free now, from fear and from the past. Irina approached, her voice soft. Monsieur Poirot, you've given her peace, and perhaps you understand the heart's weight yourself. Poirot's eyes flickered, a memory of Countess Rossakoff's fiery charm surfacing briefly. Countess, the heart of Hercule Poirot, it is dedicated to justice. But I thank you for your admiration. Clara Wren, her notebook forgotten, spoke up. I'm sorry, Madame Dubois. I was chasing a story, not truth. I'll write no more of this. Julian, released from suspicion, offered a shaky nod. I was wrong, Madame. I thought destroying your letters would save my father's name. I see now it was his shame, not yours. Elise managed a smile, her hand on the locket now back at her neck. You've all seen my heart laid bare. Monsieur Poirot, how can I repay you? Poirot bowed, accepting the sapphire brooch she pressed into his hand. Madame, this is enough. A reminder that even the heart's mysteries yield to the little grey cells. As the constable led Benton away, the guests dispersed, their secrets aired, their burdens lighter. Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, the Manor's shadows retreating under the sun's clarity. In their guest room, Hastings packed, glancing at Poirot, who held the brooch to the light. You turned down Irina, Poirot, Hastings said, a teasing note in his voice. She's a stunner, you know. Ever think of, well, love? Poirot tucked the brooch into his pocket, his smile wistful. Mon ami, love is a puzzle I leave to others. The mind of Poirot, it finds its joy in order, in justice. And perhaps, in a quiet moment, in the memory of a dance. They boarded the Rolls-Royce back to the station, the Kentish hills rolling past like a painting. Willowmere Hall faded into the distance, its secrets resolved, its heart at rest. Poirot leaned back, the brooch a small weight against his chest, a token of a case that had stirred even his disciplined soul in London. As they stepped into their flat, Hastings clapped Poirot's shoulder. Another triumph, old chap, but I'll wager you're glad it's over. Poirot's eyes twinkled. The case, it is complete. But life, Hastings, it always has another mystery. The door closed behind them, the sapphire brooch safe in Poirot's keeping, a silent testament to a love lost and a truth found.